I'd like to talk about the book Ryunosuke Akutagawa, Rashomon and 17 Other Stories, translated by Jay Rubin. As you know, Jay Rubin is the kind of famous for Haruki Murakami's translations and so forth. I got to know him through Haruki Murakami's book. And ever since then, I became a fan of his. And so I have been talking about his Japanese short story book for a while. And in that book, this particular stories that is also in that book. But in this particular book, Akutagawa's compilations of the Akutagawa's book is in there. It's called Health Green, and I decided to read that. It's kind of a, I would say, kind of a long, like a 35 pages, 36 pages, 37 pages, or something like that, and. But before that, during that, I think the first two stories listed here is called Rashomon and In a Bamboo Grove. Those two stories, short stories, are combined together to make this movie called Rashomon by Akira Kurosawa. And as you know, this particular movie is like a funeral era that this particular I would say the murder occurs, and each individual associated with this particular person is questioned and have different stories to tell, and a very intriguing stories the movie. And that's in this Akutagawa's story, in a bamboo grove. That's the in the bamboo grove is the main storyline there. However, Rashomon in this particular book is about this several people because of the torrential rain that got into this very old ruined structure of the temple or something, and trying to escape from the rain and saw something there. So that's called Rashomon. And so those two stories in the first two stories of this particular compilation, short story. But Health Green, I never read it before, so I'm kind of curious to know what type of story that is. And it tells about is more or less like a tragic, like a revengeful tragic, and the story that gives you a little bit sting to readers. And I would say by reading it, the story is it's about this death and tremendous dissatisfaction of something, and revenge, and the human mind, contorted human mind, and the depictions of the interesting relationship of that particular era, and which I don't consider not my taste. Most of the time I prefer like a more peaceful, meditative story, and that's why probably I tend to like non-violent movies, non-violent books more. And but Akutagawa himself, I think he's considered to be a very highly skilled writer, and most of his works is a short story collections, and So I kind of bits and pieces I became familiar with his stories, and each one is kind of a interesting, very intriguing stories, and very good, very strong sentiment, and I like the particular aspects of it. But I don't necessarily cherish these things, day and night or anything. So, but anyway, so that's my start of reading this book, and this particular story is about the artist who has a beautiful daughter, and the daughter goes to serve his Lord, and because she is so witty and charming and beautiful, the Lord likes her, and so he keeps her in that castle. And so father, living outskirts, wants his daughter back, and ask, but of course the Lord refused that request, and so the artist got the revenge for whatever, dissatisfied, and the Lord goes back to respond to this artist, and the request the artist to paint some hell scene of that the era, I would say. Hell is very common in the Western world as well, in the Japanese religion as well, and depicted the same. It's like a torturing, tremendously hot, and the people suffer a lot in the hell. But anyway, so the father was asked to paint that. So by the time he was doing that painting, he was very dissatisfied because the daughter is not around, and kind of a possessive of daughters. So he kind of not satisfied with that, and but the Lord requests him to paint some hell scene, and so he said okay, but to do that I need some experience of being a tremendously difficult hell scene. I have to witness. So he asked the Lord, "What if you could burn the particular chariot or the carriage that you use and put on fire?" But in that particular carriage, there was this beautiful courtesan or ladies in there, and she gets burned to death. And so Lord thought about it. Okay, if you insist, I will create a particular scene for you. And so he arranged this particular date to realize the particular scene, burning his carriage. And of course, he put this painter's daughter in that carriage and burned the carriage. So the artist witnessed that, and tremendously, difficult situation and so forth. So that's the story of the hell screen, and I felt like it's a very interesting, good story. However, I didn't like the contents of it. It's kind of violent and difficult to understand that sentiment of this Lord and the Father, and so Akutagawa seems to be a very, very good writer, and as a matter of fact, that in Japan there's two awards given every year for the writer, up and coming writers, and one is called Naoki Prize, and that is given to the authors who are more popular fictions and so forth. But Akutagawa Prize is like a pure literature, and was called Akutagawa Prize. So that took from this author, Akutagawa Ryunosuke. And so, but he is one of the most famous Japanese writer after Meiji Restoration, 1860, 69, 68. And in this particular book, introduction was written by Haruki Murakami. And Haruki Murakami not only talk about Akutagawa in that introduction, he talks about, in general, the whole Japanese literary world analysis. After he's after the post World War II writer, and he didn't read much about Japanese fiction, and he was tremendously influenced by Western fiction or European fiction, like Western. After the World War II, tremendous emphasis is on like a U.S. culture, and emphasis on British and French and Germans and Italians and so forth. So he pretty much didn't read the Japanese fictions, but that's not true. According to this particular introduction, he, of course, as a writer, he was reading. When he was a little boy, he was reading Japanese fiction, and his favorite gets full. His favorite is Natsume, Soseki Natsume. I think Murakami seems to think that is the best Japanese author. And the second best is Junichiro Tanizaki, and then third maybe Akutagawa or something like that. He talks about that, and so wow, it's kind of interesting. That's my without knowing his opinion, my favorites is Natsume and Tanizaki. So wow, I thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway, so that's Ryunosuke Akutagawa's Health Screen. If you're interested in this book, it's a Penguin books, I think. Penguin Classic is available, and I think it's a very good translation of the original Akutagawa's writing, and it's worthwhile. His stories is worthwhile to enjoy, because each one is very intriguing, very kind of strong, and a very peculiar aspects of something, and but story-wise it's very well constructed, and I would say, in my mind, interesting to read. So I would recommend this particular book. Okay, bye.